Can you feel it? The beckoning call of the wild. The kindling in your spirit when you hear the untamed howls of the wilderness. The immolation in your blood as the thrill of the hunt pours over you. Smoldering remains of your enemies lay in waste behind as you conquer and bond with beasts of unwavering loyalty and ferocity. And only whispers dare call your name, as all fear the swift death that falls from your aim, for you are the hunter.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of the Cloak and Quiver podcast. My name is Solar, and before we get into some of the more WoD Alpha news, I want to talk a little bit about some of the show schedule and the website updates and things like that. Some of the few things we touched bases on last week and a couple shows prior. Something to do with the show schedule, though, is I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about Solar here. So I work as a lifeguard for the city of Phoenix, Arizona, during the summer, and this year I actually signed up not only to be a lifeguard, but to be a swim instructor as well. So now I'm teaching kids how to swim and things like that, and they bumped me to 40 hours a week, and then I also have to do the training for that as well while I'm going through this. So now, long story short, I'm working 40 to 50 hours a week, and so I seriously get up at 8, and I'm not home until 7:30 in the evening, and living in Arizona and being outside, it's like living in the Firelands. So I'm bushed when I get home. So what we're going to do is I always have Fridays off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be recording the show on Fridays, and then I'll be uploading it to iTunes and Stitcher and YouTube on the weekends. So that's going to be our new show schedule for the time being, at least for the next 2 months, just because I honestly can't find time to fit in recording, editing, compiling show notes, really anywhere else, just because I fall right asleep when I get home. So there is that. So that's what I'm up to for the next 2 months. It was 109 degrees yesterday. Can you believe that? And we're just starting. Like, come July, it's going to be like 116. Can't wait. But let's talk a little bit about the website, too. I told you guys last week we were working on the Cloak and Quiver website. I was going through HostGator, and I was using these WordPress plugins. And the website is coming along really well. Because I didn't really have a lot of time to work on it this week, it's not finished. But some of the widgets, I'm not really sure what they call them, widgets, plugins for the website are really, really cool. I mean, I'm able to do polls. It looks very clean, very compact. It's not messy. And that's what I like about it so far. It looks very sleek, I think is a good word to describe it. I think, honestly, I'll have it ready for next week's show, though. I'm actually quite positive I will. There's not much left to do. I'm still working on a few extra goodies, and that involves like coding, and one of my buddies in my guild is helping me with that. So I think the website is going to look awesome. But let's talk a little bit about the Mogu'shan Vaults raid that I want to do. And last week I told you guys I was talking to a Horde side hunter who wanted to do this, and we may still follow through with that on the Horde side. But what I'm going to do, seeing as there's so many prominent Alliance hunters, and I'm not really trying to, it's so hard, because when you have two factions, you don't want to discriminate, but you can't please everyone at the same time. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to boost up an Alliance hunter just so I can have something to do. And I'm probably going to do the Mogu'shan Vaults, the Cloak and Quiver sanctioned hunter Mogu'shan Vaults run on Alliance. And when this is going to be, it's going to be in August. It's going to be early August, because that's when my work season ends, and I'm going to do it just when I get off of work. Because right now I honestly do not have time to do anything outside of working and then raid night. So that's what's going to happen with the Mogu'shan Vaults race. It's going to be early August, probably the first or second week, and depending on turnout, it's either going to be 10 or 25, but it's going to be awesome. In short, and I'm honestly positive we can kill a couple bosses, which is going to be, history, right? No one's ever done this before. I mean, the idea has been around for a while, but no 25 or 10 hunters have gone into Mogu'shan Vaults and took it out. So that's what we have planned for MSV, and we're going to do that in early August. And then let's get into the news. We actually got a couple news updates this last week for Warlords. Survival, very interesting stuff for Survival. Quite the development for this spec, and let's talk about it. The first big one that I want to mention, though, is the one that I was so happy for, and then they took it away. And yes, you did hear that right. The big thing Survival was getting, the big cooldown, the fancy trap that everyone was so excited for, Bear Trap, is being removed from the spec. It is no longer going to be a talent. It is not going to be part of the spec. It is completely gone, which is saddening, actually, because I really felt like we've talked about this before on the show, but I honestly feel like having 3 DPS cooldowns that kind of identify with that spec, like Marksman has Rapid Fire, BM has Bestial Wrath, and Survival was going to have this Bear Trap. And, Survival Hunters being very elemental, poison, trap, based kind of damage, to see this removed is actually kind of frustrating, and I don't really know what the reason was for this. We talked about some concerns with Bear Trap last episode where, maybe, what if you missed your Bear Trap, would the cooldown be reset if it wasn't tripped in like 15 seconds? Was the radius going to be large, so it was easier to, place on the boss instead of, pinpoint accuracy if there was ads, etc., etc. We talked about this last episode. But to see it removed is actually quite frustrating to me because I'm still a strong believer that each spec should have a DPS cooldown. I think being able to, because what this does is it offers you more talent choices. If you want an extra DPS cooldown, say there's like a bursty part in a fight where you need to do more damage, you would take another burst DPS talent. But say you didn't need that, you could still have your on-demand damage cooldown from your spec, and then you would be able to choose, okay, do I want to take Stampede? No, I feel like taking Blink Strikes. It offers you more options, and I think that's a strong gameplay component. And I'm sad to see it go. Celestalon didn't really offer any reasons as to why it was gone. He might, I don't know. But what do we do now? Do we panic? Maybe. I don't know. I really wish, because Survival does not have Kill Shot, and now Survival does not have Bear Trap. And we talked a little bit about kill shots last episode where we were saying, there was a time where I think it was Celestalon who said if your spec does not have an execute, that means your damage is actually tuned a little bit better because you don't have to have a sharp spike at the end of the 20%. Well, it may be an extra button to press in terms of design and balancing. It's actually not that good to have, which that I don't handle that. I don't deal with that. I'm just the player here, so I have to deal with what you guys give me. I don't get to design the classes, so. Quite confusing that Bear Trap is now removed. Now, in the tweet where he said that Bear Trap was being removed, he also said it was not needed without readiness. Now, as you guys may know, we're not talking about the old readiness that we used to have. It's actually the new stat that was going to be in Warlords, but was also removed as well. He said Bear Trap was not needed without the readiness stat. Now, readiness was if you have readiness on your gear, it would reduce cooldowns of certain abilities by, the percentage of readiness that you did have on that gear. Well, now that he said that it felt like it wasn't needed, I still don't feel like that's a strong argument. Again, this is just from a player perspective. I'm not much of a designer or a developer, but just from what I've been given here, if you gave it a base cooldown of 3 minutes, I feel like that is still an acceptable, suitable talent to be able to give to the survival class. It is, it has a certain affinity towards the spec. It is a trap, and it's on a 3-minute cooldown, like Rapid Fire, or it's not. Excuse me, not Rapid Fire, but Stampede was on 5-minute cooldown. Rapid Fire is on a 2-minute cooldown now with Assurance of Consequence. I just feel like something with a base cooldown that's not affected by the readiness stat is still a viable DPS, toolkit for us. It is a cooldown that we could use. I still believe that it would have been a valuable asset to that spec. So I don't know really what to think about this other than I don't know why it was removed, and it's kind of frustrating. He went on to say, however, that he felt like it was a button not needed, which I disagree with. He said it may convolute the spec, which I am in opposition of. And the reason being is because, I'm not bashing survival hunters. Play what you groove with. Don't get me wrong here, but survival is not a hard spec to play by any stretch of the imagination. It is probably it probably is the most simplest hunter spec to play right now. You seriously put up your dots and you hit explosive shot on cooldown. Okay, you got a proc of lock and load. Okay, let's dump that sucker into the boss. Ooh, that's not too hard. Adding a DPS cooldown that you're going to use every 3 minutes, roughly, does not convolute a spec. It does not add bloat to me. That is a tool for you to use to add more damage in a situation where you want to add more damage. That's just my opinion on the matter. We'll talk about this in a minute when we get to our black arrow changes, but as it stands right now, survival doesn't really have any burst DPS. It seems, I don't know how they're going to tune the damage. Like, if it's just strong, straightforward, you may not have huge burst, but you're not really going to peter out, you know what I mean? You may start the fight at, say, 300k, but this is just example numbers. You may start the fight at 300k while everyone else is at 600, but when their burst wears off and they're back down at 200, you'll still be at 300k. I'm not sure what the numbers look like because I'm not an alpha, but it could be okay. We don't know what to look at yet exactly, just because we've hardly seen any of the numbers and the scaling and stuff like that. But we'll talk a little bit about Black Arrow in a second and how we may be able to add some burst components to survival. But as it stands right now, there really isn't any. In fact, there is none, unless you take a talent. But every other hunter is going to have that talent option as well, so it kind of negates it. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about Black Arrow changes. Well, Black Arrow and Lock and Load, they both got a bit of an update. So as it stands right now, Lock and Load isn't really going to be a thing in the game. It's actually built in, it's not going to be in your spellbook or anything. It's actually built into Black Arrow. And the change now is actually quite interesting. So what's going to happen is, so say we're in Warlords and we cast Black Arrow on the boss. We are guaranteed one proc. The proc is not determined as to where it's going to be, but we're guaranteed one proc. And when it does proc, we have a 20... Okay, how do I explain this well? So we cast Black Arrow on the boss, and actually, let's say the first tick does proc our Lock and Load. So every tick after that, the game does a dice roll, and the dice roll is a 20% chance to proc again. And say it does proc again, and then it rolls the dice, and we have another 20% chance to proc. So basically, we get a proc, 20% chance to proc again. We get that proc, it has a 20% chance to proc again, and it keeps going until we fail the roll. So we have an 80% chance to fail each time, but there's a 20% chance for each tick that it is going to proc again. That's how the new Black Arrow is going to work. So it adds, as you can see, a severe RNG factor to our damage as survival hunters in terms of not only our burst, but our overall sustained damage, because Black Arrow is something that we keep on the boss, as close to a, on cooldown / 100% uptime as possible deal. And because of this, if our damage is now determined by, an internal dice roll and on a 20% chance to proc again, I'm not saying it's not going to happen where we're going to get streaks where it goes through the entire duration, but, let's be real here. Even with the 4-piece right now for survival, it's so hit and miss. And we've talked about this before, I am not a fan of RNG. I like my damage to be, I would say predictable and consistent, because I don't like that random factor. I don't like to do, 500k DPS on one run and then 420 on the next run. I'm not a fan of that. I don't want my DPS to fluctuate like that. One could certainly argue that it does add an element of gameplay of, randomness. Okay, oh, my button's lit up, smack, 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 and then on the next one, oh, my button's lit up more times, smack, smack, smack. Cool. I can understand that from more, and I wouldn't even say more casual point of or perspective, but more of a laid back kind of, it doesn't bother me that much. I just don't see it that way. That's all. And so that's how I kind of feel about survival in regards to Lock and Load and Black Arrow now. It's kind of a bummer to me. However, in addition to this, or because of this, they actually removed Lock and Load being able to proc from your ice and freezing traps, which was, your predictable, quote-unquote, burst damage from survival involving Lock and Load. And having that removed really does, like we said a second ago, throws out the window of any possible outcome of being able to predict your damage as survival. Not being able to, as we said, lay down an ice trap and proc your Lock and Load when you wanted to if you didn't get it for that Black Arrow was a bit of, it was nice. Like, say, on Garrosh, when you went up to kill an engineer, I would throw my ice trap up there and immediately proc my Lock and Load because I was ready to deal that burst damage and kill it quickly. Now that's out the window. Now I'm just, throwing the dice every single time. And so with that gone, I'm looking at survival less and less now for Warlords of Draenor. I'm actually fascinated by the marks changes, and I've always been solid. Me and BM have been bros for a while now, so I'm kind of looking, like I said, less and less at survival in terms of actually, am I going to play this for this expansion, because it's just not the kind of spec that I feel that I want to play, really. So that, in short, survival getting a lot of changes, a lot of RNG changes, and there's a few small changes to BM, Marksman, and Survival in terms of our survivability, or at least healing, that I thought was quite interesting. And they're very small, they're very quick changes, but I think they're kind of odd, or I wouldn't say odd, but I really didn't think that they were going to throw hunters this much of a bone in regards to survivability, health, and healing, especially when we saw the camouflage perk and even the improved camouflage for survival, which I think is a huge perk of that spec, honestly, is the amount of healing you can actually get out of survival now. But anyway, so as we know, Marksman and BM are the only two specs to get Kill Shot right now. And Kill Shot, as it works now, it still has the 2 charges. That hasn't changed. But if the target dies from the Kill Shot, the Hunter will regain 15% of maximum health. And then Survival just has a plain Jane survival. After killing a target, you gain 15% health over 10 seconds. That's a big one. I think this speaks a bit more to leveling and perhaps the solo experience. But not only this, but in BGs, I mean, you can go 1-on-1 or 1-on-2 on a target quite often, and then being able to get this health back after you kill someone is actually pretty cool. And on like heavy ad fights, this could also be a big thing. Like say on Siegecrafter, if you're AoEing all the mines down, or on Shaw of Pride after killing so many of those reflections that pop up. I mean, that's not something that you would scoff at. I mean, that's a large potential to get a lot of health back very quickly. And I like that, you know, in conjunction with Spirit Bond, with this. I mean, that's pretty cool in my opinion. I mean, I don't think it's a huge game changer, but just I really, like I said a second ago, I was surprised that they were throwing this much of a bone towards us in regards to our healing and our survivability. So, I mean, a small change, but a cool change. So that is that. And I wanted to talk about one more thing. I mentioned this a few minutes ago when I said I didn't have an alpha invite. But the Warlords of Draenor Alpha is out, and I was able to catch a few Hunter streams. I don't really want to spoil the experience too much. I've always been conflicted when alphas and betas came out, because I always told myself, oh, new game, I want to be excited for it. I don't want to experience so much of the content. But now, being a content creator for you guys, I really do want to get in there and show you guys and be able to tell you the stories of how Hunter is currently in the alpha, and then be able to share those experiences with you. So I am hunting for a alpha invite quite viciously. I haven't gotten one yet, but hopefully that they kick one my way. It seems like a lot of streamers got one, and people that it was weird. One of the guys in our guild who it used to be, he hasn't raided or played a Blizzard game since tier 11. That was the first tier of Cataclysm. I'm not talking Heroes, Hearthstone, Diablo, anything. They gave him an alpha invite, which was just like, what? And then I have like a guy that's so on and off with his Blizzard games. You know, he plays for a month and then he quits for a month, and he got an alpha invite. So I don't even know what the process is. I think it's just black magic, to tell you the truth. I don't know what the picking process is in regards to alpha invites. Hopefully I get one, but I'll try and relay as much alpha news as I can to you guys, even if I don't have one. So there is that. And the last thing I want to talk about before we get into the big meat of our show, which is going to be a very thorough walkthrough / breakdown of all the Siege of Orgrimmar bosses, regardless of spec. We're talking tips and tricks. I'd be very surprised if you knew everything that I said in the next 20 minutes or so. I think there's going to be at least one nugget of information that's actually going to be very valuable to you. But before we go into that, though, I wanted to mention one thing. Last week we talked a little bit about flying pets, how large flapping wings on the screen it was just kind of off-putting to me. I didn't really care for flyers, and how we kind of wanted the new wasps to have new fluid animations, things like that. Well, I actually saw, and I wasn't aware of this. I thought just for some reason they were just scenic. I saw a hunter yesterday on my realm who had a crow for a pet. I'm talking like an actual in-game sized crow, not a huge gigantic crow or a hawk or anything like that. A little tiny crow as a hunter pet, and it flew kind of cool. The gliding was neat. When it was attacking, it kind of like threw itself into the target. Obviously the clipping animation was a little off, but I sure thought it was a neat flyer because it was small. It looked cool, especially when he did Bestial Wrath. I was like, man, that is pretty neat. Got a little bit bigger, red, and I was a big fan. And these are called I don't remember the name, but if you go to Petopia, you can find it under Birds of Prey, I think. Anyway, point being is you can actually get two of them. One's on the Thunder Isle, close to Nalek, the world boss, and then there's another one in, I think it's Town Long Steps, and I really wish I knew where they were. But if you guys look it up on Petopia, which is an awesome pet resource, by the way, go check that out if you want to see every single skin of Hunter Pet that you can get in the game. Give it a look. But what I wanted to mention was this pet just looked really cool, and if you were kind of in the same boat that I was about flying pets and how they were kind of just obnoxious, in my opinion, again, just in the way kind of thing. I thought this was actually a little neat alternative for that. It kind of solved the problem of just getting in the way, and it sits, I believe it sat on the ground if it wasn't actually moving, and I thought that was a neat little addition as well. It was actually, it wasn't flying when you were stationary, so I was like, oh, that's pretty darn cool. So if you guys want to check that out, that is the Crow Pet. But alright, let's get into the Siege of Orgrimmar tips, tricks, and everything you need to know. Alright, so let's break it down. First boss, as I think we all know, is Immersius. So the recommended spec, I think, you can go with BM. They fixed the pet pathing issue where your pet would despawn because it would try to run to the other side of Immersius and you were too far away. But I think you could take either Survival or BM. Now, I would get Binding Shot for sure on this if you don't already roll it, and I would also get Barrage if you are doing this on Heroic. And we'll talk about that in a second. So, some tips and tricks. So let's talk about some of the little tiny things we can do here. So, as we know, Immersius has his swirl ability. That is where he does that, like, 180-degree, shoot out that giant jet of water and you get knocked back. And on Heroic, it can do a sizable amount of damage. You can actually deterrence through this. If you pop your deterrence right before it hits you, you won't get knocked back, you won't take any damage. Everything is awesome. You can also, and this is a big one on this fight, I think, it's saved me thousands of times. Seriously, I shouldn't say thousands, but hundreds. I would say close to 100. Anyway, so when the ads are, when he splits up into all those little tiny ads, and they come to the center, and when they arrive in the center, they do that huge explosion, and as we know, 17, 20 of those suckers going off at the same time can easily, I wouldn't say one-shot you, but can kill you within a second. If you pop deterrence for this as well, you will negate all of the damage completely. It is seriously like a paladin bubble, and it is so awesome. Now, if you are survival, you can use Ice Trap and Snake Trap, and if you have the Binding Shot talent, you can also use Binding Shot. But the ads that when he does split up, and you can slow the DPS ads down. So if you're going to, like, say, take on 3 ads, and you can think, okay, I'm going to AoE these 3 ads down, you can throw an Ice Trap or a Binding Shot to maybe, say, the 2 ads to your left or your right, and you can handle those guys in a minute after you take out those 3 ads. So you can kind of use some slows, snares, roots, and stuns to, say, okay, I'm going to save you for later, I'm going to come back to you. Now, if you do this on Heroic, if you take Barrage, you can, of course, when all of the... what's it called? The debuff that you get that summons the little tiny ads, those little swirly shaws or whatever they're called, and your tank picks them all up. A good way, what I do is I just put Misdirect on the tank and Barrage, so there's no loose aggro. All of these ads go right to the tank, and it's super duper easy, and you just AoE. Now, however, there is some glaive toss room in this fight. I feel like and it's very situational. I would say if you're using glaive toss, try and make the most out of it for this fight. If 4 of the DPS ads get lined up in a row, make sure the first one you target is the furthest one out. That way, if you roll your glaive toss out, it hits all of them and it applies that slow. So they're just, they got that 50% movement speed reduction for that duration of the glaive toss debuff. And I think that's kind of a nice thing to do. Maybe if you're doing it on normal or you're on heroic and you're just like, I don't want to use barrage tonight. Use glaive toss, but make the most out of it. Make sure you target the furthest one out so you get the debuff, on the way there, and it will also refresh on the way back. Pretty cool. So, Fallen Protectors, there's a few for this one. So I'd say the first big one is when Rook goes into his special phase and the 3 of those split ads come out. The Inferno Strike, which is the one that puts that large orange circle around you that players have to stack in to split the damage. Well, what you can do is you can, right before the debuff is about to go off, you can just pop Deterrence and then take it right off once the blast goes off. And what this does is it doesn't, so say you're out a little bit farther from the raid just because you can. It allows it so the players don't have to move to you or you don't have to move to them and vice versa, and it also negates the damage, which is actually kind of cool. And I like that. And now when the rogue, goes into his split phase and he summons that Mark of Anguish, you can actually solo soak the Mark of Anguish for 10 seconds with Deterrence. You can take it a little bit before because the damage of that debuff hasn't ramped up all the way yet, but after a few seconds you are going to want to pop those Deterrence charges, and you can take him for a full 10 seconds. You can't deal damage, which kind of sucks. My raid likes to play pranks on me each week, which I hate. But they always put the Mark of Anguish on me because they know I have to pop Deterrence in a second, and I always just throw it to my tank. But I'm like, "Good, you make me pop Deterrence this week, god darn it!" Trying to, you're supposed to deal your DPS for this fight, but that's kind of funny. But yeah, you can't soak the Mark of Anguish for 10 seconds. I would definitely take Barrage for this fight over Glaive Toss, like big time. The reason being is because there's just so much damage potential with Barrage, especially when Sun does her Desperate Measure. You position yourself to where that Barrage is going to hit all of the tiny adds. Even if that means stepping out of the protective circle for a few seconds, you're probably going to be safe. The damage, dealt from standing outside isn't really that drastic. So, I mean, you can hit seriously every single ad. The Desperate Measure that spawns on the outside, on the left, on the outside, on the right. If you stand for enough back, you can cleave seriously everything. I love Barrage for this fight for that reason alone. It's just so much damage from one button, really. And I would take BM on this fight over Survival. Reason being is because, as we've talked about before, Beast Mastery is the higher damage dealing of the two specs when it comes to AoE, as well as single target, but AoE as well. And to kind of maximize the raw power of BM on this fight, what you're going to want to do is keep your pet's Beast Cleave ability active at all times, as long as there are 2+ targets in the vicinity. We talked about this before in our BM episode as far as doing AoE damage, but basically what you're going to want to do is keep Beast Cleave up 100% of the time. And what this ends up looking like, depending on your haste, if Rapid Fire's up, if Bloodlust is up, it's usually a one multi-shot between every kill command, but sometimes I know if you're just starting out on heroics, or perhaps you're just a normal geared hunter or LFR or flex or whatever. The spectrum of players is very large here. It could be a multi-shot every other kill command, which is okay too. So it may fluctuate, but your goal is to keep Beast Cleave up as close to 100% as you can, and that's where you're going to see a really big spike in damage is because of this. It's actually really strong. If you want to stay survival, go for it. But use Serpent Spread to your advantage. We've talked about this before too. If you get your Trinket proc, you should be refreshing that multi-shot Serpent Spread with the buffed Trinket proc that you've got. Like I said, you use those Trinkets to your advantage and reapply your dots as necessary, especially Black Arrow. If you have Assurance of Consequences, you can overwrite those last couple of ticks with the Trinket proc Black Arrow, as well as your multi-shot / Serpent Spread. So that is Protectors. I would go Beast Mastery, but Survival you can still roll with. It's not that bad either. But anyway, so Nourushen's a pretty simple one. Again, I would take Beast Mastery just for its pure single target damage. I would go Glaive Toss as well. I would only take Barrage if your raid is struggling with killing the adds, or is just slow with killing those adds, the ones that cast on the outer rim of the circle. You can use Deterrence to run through the Death Beam without taking any damage, but this is it's seldom necessary. I mean, you can usually skirt left or right depending on which direction it's heading. And then I would take Binding Shot with this as well. It's actually pretty cool. So those little tiny adds that I just said a minute ago that do cast those the Shaw Bolts or whatever they are, that circle around the room. If you line your Binding Shot up, you can actually stun a couple of them, and this is actually going to negate some raid damage. So what you do to get a stun on Binding Shot without having a target move is that green ring of your Binding Shot. You want to line the tip of that ring up with the tip of the hitbox of the ad that you're trying to stun. So it should be just barely touching, barely overlapping, and that will give you an instant 5-second stun. You utilize this quite frequently on Garrosh during the transition phases, but you can use this here as well. And another tip for Nourushen, if you're in the first group to go up, I would save your cooldowns until you come out. I don't know if people do this or not. I've never really mentioned it or seen it elsewhere. But if you're in the first group, don't pop Stampede, don't pop Rapid Fire, don't pop Bestial Wrath right as the fight starts, because you're going to be going into the phase killing the ad inside. So when you come out, that's when you want to do the damage, because your stacks will be cleared, your debuff will be cleared, and you'll be able to do full damage instead of 75% damage. If you're in the second group, I would still save Stampede, but I would actually use Bestial Wrath if you were in the second group, because you'll have it up again for when you come out as well. You might as well just use it. There's no point in saving it if you can use it and have it up for when you come out as well. So that's Nourushen. Pretty simple stuff. Like I said, saving your cooldowns if you're in group 1 is probably the biggest tip that I would take away from that. Now, Shaw of Pride is a fun one. I would definitely take BM for this. Deterrence has a lot of uses in this fight. You can use it to, when he does the Swelling Pride, I think we'd use this as an example on one of the shows I was at last week or the week before that. But when he reaches 100 Pride and he casts that Swelling Pride blast, you can pop Deterrence just a second before it, and you will negate the damage of that Swelling Pride, and then you can take Deterrence again right off. And that's a pretty big benefit for this fight, because that's a lot of damage that Swelling Pride does. If on Heroic, you are doing this on Heroic, right? And you go into the other realm where you play that Pac-Man game with the ads that chase you. If one, for some reason, is going to catch up and hit you, you can actually pop deterrence and it'll run right through you and it actually won't kill you, which is pretty awesome in case you make a mistake. And you can also use Aspect of the Cheetah inside there as well, just to help zoom along in the maze, so it takes longer for them to reach you if they are getting close. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't work anymore as far as I've tested. I may have just been doing it wrong, but originally, the rifts on Heroic, those little fissures on the ground that you had to run over to get the debuff and stop, and close them and stop the raid damage. What you used to be able to do was disengage over them, and you wouldn't actually get the debuff from, soaking that rift, and you would have closed it without taking any damage or getting any debuff. The last couple of times I've tried doing this, I got the debuff, so I don't know if they fixed it, but it was a pretty rad trick. And then also when the reflections are about to spawn, this goes for normal and Heroic, pull up your focus a little bit and then spam those multi-shots in there, because it helps to be, it's padding, right? It's not like effective damage dealing. They die so quickly anyways, but if you really want to burst them down, pull up around 80 focus so you can get 2 multi-shots off and just get rid of them right quick, and it's just a done deal. It's a lot of damage super quick. Try not to go into 5 seconds before the reflections are about to spawn. Get about 80 focus pulled up right as they pop, just blast them down, and it's a done deal. So Gallicrass, there's a couple things we can do. I like this one a little bit because it uses Master's Call, which we hardly ever get to see. Again, for Gallicrass, I would take BM for this over Survival. Grab Binding Shot and Barrage just because of the amount of AoE you're going to be doing, and the Binding Shot is great for the Bone Crushers, stunning them before they get to the 3 champions of your faction. You can also use the Glyphed Explosive Trap knockback, which is actually really good, and Power Shot, and I believe Intimidation. They can all be used on the Bone Crushers to stop them from attacking, Lord Thamar, Sylvanas, or Varian. I forget what all of them are, but yeah, you can actually use a lot of knockbacks and stuns to get rid of those Bone Crushers. I wouldn't use them as your raid's go-to stun, because there's a lot better alternatives like Hodge with Paladins. But they can be used just as well if the composition requires it. Say you're the only one who has a reasonable stun. Go for it, right? So when you're up in the tower on the left-hand side, I don't think it's Dagrin. I think it's the other one. It's one of the champions. It's the left tower. But basically what happens is the slowing debuff that they put out while they're shooting those barrages on the ground in the different panels, the sections, you can actually Master's Call out of it and get that 6-second immunity without the slow, and it's actually really nice to just zip around. And also when you're up there, I wouldn't stay too close to the edge, because as we know with triangles, the farther out you go, the larger the radius is. The closer you are, being a melee hunter, you can be in melee range. I do recommend being as close as you can so you can skirt around them easier. It's just less movement. I've only done this once, and I'm always impressed if anyone can ever do this, but and I've tried a couple times, believe me. If you get knocked off, you can actually do a 180 disengage back on, but it's pretty hard. Like I said, only done it once, but it is a possibility. You just have to time it really well and know that you're going to get hit beforehand. Say the triangle goes down with a knockback, and you're like, oh shoot, here it comes. Then you can get ready for it. But just as well, if you kill the tower ad or the boss or whatever, what I do before I jump down is, I don't know how you guys do this, there's quite a few ways, but the one I prefer the most is dismissing your pet. Otherwise it takes forever to run down the tower. Dismiss your pet before you jump, disengage right before you land on the ground so you don't take any fall damage, and then just summon your pet back again. It's so much easier than having them run down the tower, around the corner, and then back out into the fray. So do that instead. I don't know what you do already, but give it a shot. But that's all my tips for Gallicrass, really. You can deterrence the debuff, that fire debuff at the end when Gallicrass comes out, but honestly, I've never really found a use for doing that. But it is an option. Now on to Iron Juggernaut. Of course, go BM for this. That is the highest yielding DPS spec for single target. When he does the knockback, you can, with some excellent timing, disengage, and it will actually not knock you back all the way from the shock pulse ability. It's very fancy. I've seen it in a video. I tried it. I said nope, not gonna do it, and I just left it alone. Now, another kind of fun trick, and I think this is the one that's probably the biggest bonus for a hunter on this fight, like having biggest benefit for having a hunter in your raid group for this fight, is soaking mines. Now, depending on 10 or 25, normal and heroic, because each variant has different damage values for soaking mines, and having Ironhawk and the glyph deterrence, plus 50% and plus 30% damage reduction, so getting that extra 20% from the glyph, you can safely eat a crawler mine for your raid if you need. So, like, say the tank can only get 2 and there's one out in the corner, you're like, oh, I got it. Run over to it, pop deterrence, slap onto that sucker, blow it up, and you won't take much damage. It just depends. I would refer to the dungeon journal depending on what difficulty you do this in, just to get a ballpark estimate of your mine damage that you're going to soak. Now, take into account your armor value, because it is physical damage, and Ironhawk as well, and glyph deterrence, to kind of see your safety zone. But I would say overall, for the most part, you can soak any mine. I would say for the most part, depending on your gear. I guess in my gear, and having like somewhere close to 800,000 HP buffed in the raid, it used to be lethal on 25 heroic. We used to not recommend our hunters to do it because, like, say we were at 70-80% health, it was a big no but now it's okay. But we seldom have to. But going back to being able to time that disengage on the shock pulse knockback, if you do pop deterrence for this, you can negate the damage and the knockback from the shock pulse as well, and this is actually much easier to do than having to time your disengage. Now, I don't know where you guys tank Iron Juggernaut, but what I always do for shock pulse is I just back myself up to that wall, or not that wall, but that kind of rocky mountain that juts out on the immediate left-hand side upon entering Iron Juggernaut. I've seen raids that tank him on like the far right-hand side of the room, but we almost tank him exactly where he spawns originally, and I just move myself to that left-hand mountain, and I get knocked back, not like say 3 or 4 feet, and then I'm ready to go again. I personally don't want to use deterrence charges to stay in a position. I'd rather use them defensively on that fight rather than just getting knocked back into East Africa. You can usually position yourself in a good spot for that fight. I mean, like I said, depending on where you tank him, but I like to move up to that little mountain area on the left-hand side. But that's Juggernaut. Now, Shamans is a pretty cool one. Shamans actually has a lot of neat little things we can do. But before we start, I want to tell you guys something that I thought was pretty incredible. Now, this last week on Raid Night, when we got to Shamans, I bursted just a little over 3 million DPS for like the first 20 seconds of the fight. It was bonkers. I mean, it was just like... That was my reaction. It was unbelievable, the amount of damage I was pumping out in the first, like I said, 20-30 seconds of the fight. It was just incredible. Now, what I did was I was as BM. It kind of goes on as to what you do in your Bestial Wrath is what it goes into. So you pop your cooldowns, you pop your Bestial Wrath, you know the drill in the opener. It's a standard opener. But once that Bestial Wrath rolls, immediately get a multi-shot out, so you get that Beast Cleave rolling, and then hit your kill command. So now we have a 6-second timer from kill command to kill command, where I just spam multi-shot, 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 multi-shot. Okay, kill command's back up again. So now Bestial Wrath has like 2 or 3 seconds left on its duration, and I've used my 2 kill commands. So what I do is now that we have that 4-piece, right, our 4-piece bonus is BM, we get that buffed damage that stacks up. So now I do a buffed damage barrage for like the last 2 seconds of my Bestial Wrath, and man, that damage just goes off. It is such an insane burst for Dark Shamans with the wolves up and everything like that. It was just so awesome. But that was my opener for Dark Shamans. I recommend you guys kind of give that a try, using that barrage at the end of the last 2 seconds of that Bestial Wrath. It was just super. I wanted to post the logs on Twitter and showed you guys the spike of damage, but I thought that might have been a little too obnoxious. It wasn't like super impressive or anything. It was just like a ton of damage. But let's get into the tips and tricks for Dark Shamans. So definitely go BM over Survival. I'll explain that in a minute. Survival's not a bad choice for this fight, but I just like to do BM a little bit. I just like BM more, honestly, but I'll explain why in a minute. And then grab Binding Shot and Barrage for this as well, and I'll also explain why in just a sec. But yeah, so Barrage reigns supreme on this fight. It lines up perfectly for every wave of the Foul Slime as those oozes. It's important to make sure that you're using it right. So basically what it is right when he summons the Foul Slime totem or whatever it is, where, Foul Slime, and that green stream comes out, make sure you have your barrage ready for this. And I'll also pull up a little bit of focus, at least for one multi-shot, and I'll tell you why in a second. So say my DPM's like, okay, foul stream in 3 seconds. So I'm going to pull up a little bit of focus for my multi-shot. So once that first ooze, like wave of oozes spawns, they kind of come out in a sequence. It's not all right at once. So I'll target an ooze, I'll hit my multi-shot, which is going to send my pet over to that ooze. It's going to start the beast cleave, and then I'll hit my barrage. And that gets my AoE really going for those oozes. And then after that, my barrage is going to line up for every single foul slime ad wave after that. And Binding Shot is also a really nice tool to stun the foul slimes with. You can also use an ice trap if you're survival, or even BM. It works either way, but as survival, you get the root as well. I would say when Siege first came out, it was kind of a deal to kite the ads a little bit, but now they die just so quickly that I just kind of DPS them instead of worrying about their position and their speed. But yeah, and you can also use deterrence when the Ashen Wall comes out. Those elementals, those rock elementals. If you deter through that, you can run right through it, no problem at all. And you can disengage over the Ashen Walls. I went through my damage log one time when I did try this out, and I did take a tick of their melee swing, but I might have had my angle wrong. And as you guys may know, there are some parts of the arena when you guys fight in that entryway to Orgrimmar they have some raised edges. So maybe if you got a little bit of a higher elevation, it would work fine. But the time that I did try it, I did take a melee swing through it. So I would use that at your own discretion. Now, that red meteor, that gigantic circle that spawns in the room as well, right as that meteor is about to land, you can use deterrence to safely soak that blast. You're not going to take any damage from the falling, I think it's called falling ash or falling meteor, one of the two. But right as it's about to explode, you can pop your deterrence and everything's totally fine. And then here's what I do. So if you go BM for this, to maximize your damage on this fight, if you guys keep them together, on Heroic, we separate them. We think the together strat is a little too risky. We just like to play it safe. On the opener, at least, you can keep your pet's Beast Cleave active at all times, right? So, like I said, on Protectors, you just have to weave in those multi-shots. But if your raid chooses to split the Shamans instead of keeping them together, you might want to use Survival for this encounter instead if you're a bit more comfortable with it. But BM is still going to yield more DPS single target. But people might be like, oh, but Survival, I get the root for the Ice Trap. That's well and dandy. Whatever works for your raid and whatever works for you. But I'm just saying, if you want to go BM for the most damage, if you're proficient with the spec, go for it. Nazgrim is a fun one. Let's talk about Nazgrim. Good old Nazgrim. It was a real stab in the gut when we had to kill him. He was my friend. He's been my friend through many expansions. I grew up and I raided and I quested with Nazgrim, and he was always there. And he was a companion of the Horde, and it was really, he had to do his duty to his war chief. But man, was it sad killing him for the first time. Anyway, Beast Mastery. Kind of noticing a trend here. Grab Binding Shot. Now, some cool things about this. So your pet, Dire Beast, and Murder of Crows during Nazgrim's defensive stance, they can all safely damage Nazgrim during his defensive stance without giving him any stacks to use as his rage stacks, which is kind of neat. I like to keep my pet and summon Dire Beast on Nazi when he's in defensive stance. It's just a really nice source of damage that you can deal while you're waiting for waves of ads to spawn, since you're not damaging Nazgrim. I'll keep Flare handy on this fight. I don't know how quickly you guys revealed the Assassin ad, but the Flare will reveal the Assassin ad while it's traveling around the room to its target. What I enjoy doing on this fight is we have the player who is targeted by the Assassin. We have the tank pick up the Iron Blade, and depending on where the War Shaman is, we kind of move a little bit. But what I like to do is I like to place a Binding Shot down next to Nazgrim when the ads are close to him. That way, they keep the ads close to Nazgrim, and this opens up a window for AoEing to happen. AoE, right? So what I do is, let's just say, for an example, the Assassin is in melee range because the guy kiting the Assassin runs him through melee. The Iron Warrior, or whatever the name of the Iron melee guy, he's there too. So I'm going to place a Binding Shot right into melee, and they stun him for 5 seconds, and now I'm going to start AoEing. So Beast Cleave, multi-shot, Barrage, Glaive Toss, whatever you're rolling with here. I wouldn't use Barrage, but Glaive Toss, your AoE. And that's kind of a nice little window for damage. I don't see many people do that. We have our hunters kind of rotate our Binding Shots, and it's just been a really nice way to start your cleave, where otherwise you would just be dealing damage to Nazgrim instead. And that's what I like to do for binding shot on this fight. And yeah, you can bind more than one with careful placement or kiting of the ad, which is pretty cool. If you have Assurance of Consequence, you will definitely want to line up and save your Stampedes for his Berserker stances. Don't use it on the pull. Use it during his Zerker. It's better to use it that way. I'm almost positive. Actually, I am positive. Save your Stampede for Berserker stance. It's an overall damage game. But that's Nazgrim. A couple little neat little tricks for him. And Malkarok is our next big guy up. And he is fairly straightforward. A lot of heroic tips, but let's get into it. So yeah, for Malk, I'd roll Beast Mastery again. I'd pick up Glaive Toss because Barrage has really no bearing here. So Deterrence, Deterrence is such a handy tool in raids. So Deterrence for this fight can be used to completely negate the damage of that smash that he does. You know, those the physical damage cleaves, and he does 3 of those. You can use Deterrence to negate the damage of that if you have to. And then after the third arcing smash, the breath that he does, that purple slam that hits the 3 corners where he did the smash, you can use Deterrence for this as well. If moving just isn't possible, or you say, heck, I don't want to move, you can pop your Deterrence for that and everything's groovy. Now, Deterrence also blocks the damage from the explosion of standing in a pool if your shield is low. So like, say your shield is red, and you have to soak a puddle, otherwise your raid would wipe, otherwise if you didn't. So say your shield is red, your raid's going to wipe if you don't soak this puddle, and you have a charge of Deter. You step inside the puddle, you pop your Deterrence, and as that explosion goes off, that puddle is, popped, so to speak, your shield is still going to remain intact, and you soaked the puddle. So you hit 2 birds with 1 stone, and you still have all of your shield and health left, and everything's awesome. So Deterrence is actually really good for that. On Heroic, when he goes into the Blood Rage phase and he puts the Displaced Energy and it also roots you in place, you can Master's Call to remove that. Pretty fun little tip. And then also on Heroic, those orbs that he places around the room, you can use Deterrence to soak those as well. I would soak orbs with Deterrence if a puddle is in the way. I wouldn't use Deterrence during the Blood Rage phase. So say in, how he alternates phases. So say in the not Blood Rage phase, I would use Deterrence to soak an orb if you had to get to a puddle. I wouldn't use it in the Blood Rage phase because you don't have a shield, and the orbs don't really hit for that much. So you can just soak a couple without having to use any mitigation, and your healers can generally top you off. I guess it's kind of dependent on your rating situation, how good your healers are. But you might want to use your discretion. Deterrence is valuable. I mean, you may have 2 charges, but it's still nice to save them for critical moments. Not something that's, I would say, a little bit minor in comparison to, like, saying soaking a puddle with low shield as to using Deterrence for soaking a few orbs in the Blood Rage phase. It's kind of like a whoop-de-doo for that one. But it is there if you need it. So that's Malkarok, kind of a fun one. Spoils, though, is pretty basic. For the longest time on Spoils, I was using Survival just because we were moving ads a lot. We were opening boxes and kind of like back and forth. And I just was like, you know what? I don't think Beast Cleave is going to be super strong on this. I just don't feel like my pet's movement and the radius of Beast Cleave is going to work out very well. So I ran with Survival for the longest time. But as we moved on into more farmy kind of Siege of Orgrimmar content, we kind of slowed our pace down. Things were a bit more stationary, and I actually switched over to Beast Mastery, I'd say for the last 3 or 4 months on Spoils, and I've honestly haven't noticed much of a difference, to be quite frank. I think if you're placed on Spark Duty, which is Heroic, those red sparks, those life or unstable sparks, whatever they're called, I think Survival is better because you don't have to wait for your pet to run from target to the spark. And I think Survival is a bit more of a valuable and viable spec for this, just because your damage is from your character and not from your pet, so to speak. So it just depends on what you're doing for this fight. But some kind of neat little trick you can use for this is on the pull, right as you're about to start and the gates drop. If you disengage off the edge onto one of the Pandarian crates, just disengage in the direction and then run over to the crate, and then misdirect the crate to your tank. It's kind of useful just for getting the fight started, to get both of those Pandaren crates out, get the buffs, and then move on to the other crates. It's kind of like a rogue sprint tricks. It's the same thing. We disengage, open it up, MD to the tank. Pretty cool. And that's just for getting the Pandaren crates out and get the buffs out to the raid ASAP. Now, the Trank Shot, which we hardly ever get to use in raids, can be used here, and it can actually remove the magic buffs from the ads on the Mantid side. The Rage of the Empress buff that they get, you can actually Trank Shot that off. I would only say that's really useful in like progression spoils. If you have it on farm, I honestly would believe it to be a waste of focus, to be honest with you. But hey, whatever. Kind of depends on what you need. If the tank's taking a ton of damage, help them out. But the set to blow debuff on the Mantid side, the one where you become a living bomb and you have to drop the bombs to get rid of the debuff, you can actually ignore it with deterrence. You're still going to explode when the time runs out, so make sure you're not next to any bombs or any players. Just walk off to the side. Right as the debuff is about to end, pop your deterrence, you're going to blow up, and then you can run back into your raid after it explodes. And everything's awesome. You take no damage, you don't explode any bombs if you run close to them, and nobody has to die. So it's pretty sweet. But that's pretty much it for spoils. Grab Barrage, of course, because of lots of AoE damage. And then take Survival, I would say, if you're on Spark Duty for Heroic. Otherwise, Beast Mastery and Survival, I would say, are about equal for this fight, to be quite honest with you. But let's go on to Thok. Thok has a couple interesting tips here. Now, Thok, I actually would take Survival on, and the reason I say this is because when Thok does his kite phase, where you kite him, around the room or from one end of the room to the other, depending on your strategy, there becomes a time where Thok moves so fast where your pet actually can't keep up. So now you're missing, those basic attacks like Claw and Smack and stuff like that, where your Blink Strikes really come into effect, and you're missing kill commands, and it kind of just goes downhill from there with your damages BM. So that's why I would say, for the most part, if you go through the fight fairly not quickly, I would take Survival. But if you kill Thok on before the second phase, even like we're doing now, you might be able to take Beast Mastery just because you're bursting a lot and he's not going to be running so much. And then with Assurance of Consequence, it makes it so Bestial Wrath can be used at opportune times, whereas before it was kind of just eh. So I would recommend, for the most part, Survival. And then as far as talents go, you may want to take Post Haste instead of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Chimera. And I say may. It just kind of helps with kiting him around, because sometimes you're just like, oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh, and then he chomps you. And then Glyph of Disengage is really good too, to get that extra distance. So if Thok fixates on you during the kite phase, you can actually feign death to get him off of you. However, the fixate jumps to another player for the remainder of the cast time. You can see where that might go wrong. I might give your raid a heads up if you are going to do that. I prefer not to do this unless under dire circumstances, like if he's right about to hit me. Otherwise, this can really mess up your kite path, because he refixates onto someone in the center of the room, wherever you guys are grouped up at, and it kind of just goes downhill from there. Yeah. I mean, hey, try it if it's I'm going to die unless I hit Feign Death. Now, remember how I said taking Post Haste and Glyph of Disengage? It's purely situational. I take them out of precaution, just so if I do get fixated, I have a lot of tools to my advantage. Because all it takes is one death of Thok's Fixate to take, to say, oh, I wish I had this tool for my toolkit instead. So the added distance plus the speed bonus makes handling this ability Fixate a lot easier and a lot less stressful. But you do lose the 2-minute cooldown of deterrence, and it goes up to 3 since you don't use Crouching Tiger, Hidden Chimera. But, hey, all it takes is one death to say, I wish I had that talent. So, it's up to you. Use your discretion. Now, kind of a neat little trick. So when you guys open up the cage for Thok and he eats the ads that come out, how he gains health back. Well, if you apply Widow's Venom before Thok does this, it would actually cause him to heal for 25% less of the heal that he otherwise would have done. So you can actually save quite a bit of damage by doing this, where he doesn't heal, he heals for 75% of the amount. So applying Widow's Venom or Mortal Strike, if you have a warrior in the raid, I don't know. I always apply Widow's Venom before he does it. But it's just kind of a nice little trick. Trick. There we go. Woof, man, tips and tricks are really hard for me to say sometimes. Alright, so, and then on Heroic, when the bats come down, if you use Binding Shot or have the tank move just a little bit and get the AoE stun on the bats, it's going to negate a very large amount of raid damage. And speaking of this, if you are BM for this fight, like you just say, I'm not going to play Survival, save your Bestial Wrath for this. What happens is you actually have to hold on to it for a little bit. Usually you delay it by about 20 or 30 seconds because it usually comes off of cooldown while in the kite phase, and don't use it in the kite phase. Use it for the bats because you can burst them down very efficiently with Bestial Wrath up. So I save my Bestial Wrath for this just until the bats come down. I Binding Shot, then I Bestial Wrath, and I just go to town on the AoE damage. But that's Thok in a nutshell. There's some cool stuff that you can do for Thok, but the Siege Crafter is a big one. I know a lot of people get stuck on Siege Crafter on both normal and heroic. He is a pain in the butt, to put it lightly, especially on heroic. I believe it was somewhere close to 180 wipes it took us to kill him. He is a nightmare in short. Now, there's so much to say about Siege Crafter and so many things that you have to go into detail and demonstrate and show that I'm actually not going to explain it right now. Now, you're going to be like, well, what do you mean you're not going to explain it right now? Hold the phone. I'm going to, on the show Twitter, right after I record this, I'm going to link my very own Solar's Siege Crafter, Siege Crafter tips and tricks video. It's like 5 minutes long, and it goes over every single thing you need to know about doing Siege Crafter as a hunter. It is amazing resource if you're on Siege Crafter or you want to learn how to do Siege Crafter a little bit better. It has everything. So if you want to check this out, go to the Cloak and Quiver Twitter. So twitter.com/Cloak and Quiver. It'll be the video that I posted in like the last day or two, depending on when you're listening to this. But check it out. I highly, highly, highly recommend watching this video because of how good of a resource it actually is. So that's all I'm going to say about Siege Crafter is watch the video. It's very, very useful. Okay, so because there's so many things you can do on the platform, on the belt. It's just it's a hunter's paradise in regards to being able to use your toolkit and your abilities to your advantage. So that brings us to Paragons. And Paragons is actually my least favorite fight in the entire instance. It's buggy, pun intended, I guess. It's just so frustrating because sometimes like the bloods that Skier spawns like go to him, they go to other ads. It's just like, what's going on here? I quit. And it's so chaotic. I don't mind chaos, but it is not controlled chaos. Things are just flying everywhere. Damage is going up. People are getting one shot. It's just like, oh. Anyway. Take Beast Mastery for this and grab Binding Shot as well. So let's start from the beginning. The kill order changes from raid group to raid group. I've noticed normal heroic, it always changes. So the blood ads that Skier does summon, though, they can be stunned with Binding Shot, and they can also be slowed with your Ice Trap. So give those two a shot just to prevent them from reaching Skier or the target or whatever a lot slower than they otherwise would have been. Now, when Recall summons those parasites, you can actually feign death when a parasite is channeling on you to break the cast and have the parasite unfixate momentarily, so that'll stop some damage onto you. And the parasites are also susceptible to freezing trap. So, like, say if you're there's just the AOE going on in the raid is going to break the freezing trap. So if you're a bit further out, you can drop your freezing trap on it, and it'll stun it, and it'll stop the damage out on you. But if someone goes over and like cleaves it or something, it'll break out again. But it's a nice way to stop damage on you. It's kind of a cool little trick. I like to use Binding Shot on large clusters of parasites, especially in melee or as they're running to melee, to stun them. And this reduces a lot of raid damage, actually, because of it. And I think Binding Shot is actually a really useful, underutilized tool for this fight in regards to just saving people's lives. If Hisek chooses you as his aim target, which this is a really cool trick, you can feign death it, and he'll cancel the cast, and no damage will go out to you or the people that have to soak it. You'll still be rooted in place, like in the location that he placed you for a couple seconds, but that'll fade after the aim would have otherwise gone off. But you feign deathed it, and no damage goes out. So it's really awesome, super useful. I would say watch your health during Ayacook's Fiery Edge. Those lines that connect to you in your raid. If you're lacking raid cooldowns, or you say you're missing one, or the positioning just isn't ideal because you guys are too close together, that means the damage is going to be higher. It's very common for your health to dip very low. I often save deterrence just for this reason during these, if they are really super sketchy and like, oh my gosh, am I going to die here? It is lost damage uptime, but remember, a dead DPSer does no DPS. So I like to save deterrence for this just because it's like, kind of thing. Is it going to kill you? Now, if chosen by a Kunchong and it's mesmerizing you, you can disengage as often as possible to gain distance. With AOC and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Chimera, like 6-second disengage, the thing will... depending on where you're at, honestly, the Kunshong, you will never reach it. It's so cool. And this gives your raid a lot of time to kill the Kunshong and break you out. Just make sure you aren't expecting to post haste, because after you disengage, you're going to start running faster forward, which really stinks. And also make sure your priest life grips don't have the body and soul, or otherwise they'll run faster in the direction that the Kunshong is to your doom. So make sure you don't have any speed boosts on you when this is going on. But that's Paragons of the Calaxy. Pretty basic. A lot of damage mitigating we can do on this fight, which is pretty cool. And that brings us to Big Daddy Garrosh. Now, Garrosh actually has a lot that we can do, and I think for both specs too, which kind of speaks to the recommended spec for this fight. I honestly feel like Survival and Beastmaster are equal in terms of being able to handle the encounter. Like, Survival is really good at like doing engineers if you're an engineer DPSer for this fight. But Beastmaster is also very good just because of the high damage that it deals, as well as you get comfortable with it too. Like for mind controls, you're gonna pop a beast cleave right before the mind control goes out, so the tick with the beast cleave hits everyone that gets mind controlled in the radius. I mean, things like that. I used Survival for like our first 7 kills just because it was easier to throw damage to things. Like, it was easier to dot up the weapons. Like, you put a black arrow on the weapon, that was no big deal, or a serpent sting or whatever. But then I actually switched over to BM for like the last, I don't know, maybe 14 kills that we've done now for Garrosh. So I honestly think you can choose whichever you prefer. I mean, I'm never going to tell you how to play. I'm just going to tell you what you have, what options you have. Beast Mastery is super good at killing the Phase 1 adds, the Warbringers that come out of the side. The cleave from Beast Mastery is just, untouchable. So there's a lot to say for Garrosh on this. I honestly think that you can go both ways and still, see desirable outcomes from each spec. So just for tips and tricks overall, you can deterrence both being run over from the Iron Star in Phase 1, as well as the damage that it deals after hitting against the wall. However, these are not usually the most ideal situations to have to use a charge on, but you can definitely do it. You can also be placed on interrupt duty for the Farseer Shaman. Both counter shots, silencing shot, and scatter shot will interrupt his cast, which is handy if you want to be placed in the interrupt rotation for him, for casting those chain heals that he does. When you get ported up into the transition phases, you can also use deterrence to the annihilate that he does, those gigantic slams with his weapon, as well as the damage it deals in the surrounding area. So you may not get hit by the annihilate, but the damage that the blast deals, you can also deterrence through as well. These are potentially life-saving plays. I would definitely say that I have used deterrence in this, especially if you did not get a protection orb. Like if one was never dropped on your side, deterrence would be a very ideal option here to use. And when you come out, you're going to see Whirling Corruptions after this, so if you're lacking raid cooldowns or the Whirling Corruption just gets a little too dangerous, you can use deterrence to the damage, and again, this is a potentially life-saving play. I like to use Binding Shot at the very end of the run on Terrace of Endless Spring, the intermission where all of those adds, there's like tons of little adds, and you run up to the very end. Once all the adds are all grouped up at the very end, I like to place the Binding Shot down, let my tank know the binding is down, and he'll run him through it, and it's just a mass stun, and everyone can nuke him down right in one location, which is actually really nice. Now, there are multiple ways to tackle the Whirling Corruptions, the empowered Whirling Corruptions that spawn the adds. I've seen people use the Separate and Kill strategy, and if you do use the Separate and Kill strategy, where you separate the adds as they come out and kill them one by one, you separate them apart, obviously, Separate and Kill strategy. But what you do is you can either misdirect or distracting shot the adds to yourself or your pet, and you can keep it on or near you to be killed. This is actually really nice if, like, say someone has 2 on them or something like that, or a tank has a couple. There's a lot you can do for this. MD to your pet, you can distracting one to you. There's many options here for you. And if you do the Separate and Kill strategy, using distracting shot and MD is actually really useful. And I like to use that on normal mode. We did not use the Separate and Kill strategy for heroic. We kite them around the room, actually. Anyway, now a cool thing about Murder of Crows on this fight is if you are using it, hey, blink strikes. But if you are using Murder of Crows, you'll want to learn how to time it properly with Garrosh's mini health transitions. You can time it or delay it depending on what you're working with here, like how fast you're killing the boss, until he reaches sub 20% HP. Then pop it, and then you'll be able to use it again on him in 1 minute instead of 2, and you can repeat this many times because of the multiple health transitions that Garrosh goes through. I think like 4 is the maximum amount that you can actually capitalize on Murder of Crows, and that's pretty sweet. And then on Heroic, although if you're on Heroic Garrosh as a hunter, I imagine you already know this, but you can use Binding Shot in the transition of the Temple of the Jade Serpent on the Embodied Doubt ads, and you can get a triple stun. There is a photo for reference that you can get just by Googling Heroic Garrosh Binding Shot, and you just Google images that, and I'll give you photo references for the locations. But it's actually really nice and incredibly valuable in the stun rotation for this fight to be able to get a 5-second stun without having to deal with all 3 of them casting. And that's actually a really big benefit to being a hunter and having one for Garrosh, is just because of the AoE stun that you can do. And that's pretty super. And if you do go survival for this fight, again, we mentioned this a couple times, that if you use your ice trap on the engineer, because you are on engineer duty, I've had to do this a couple times even after our first Garrosh kill, you can use that to use your lock and load, to bait your lock and load to get the immediate burst from the 3 lock and loads, or more, depending on if you get a good bonus from your tier piece. But there is that as well, and that's actually pretty awesome to be able to use as well. You can cast your Black Arrow on Garrosh just to be able to see if you can get it on the way over there. But sometimes I'll cast Black Arrow and put my trap up on the engineer, it truthfully is not the most ideal place to use Black Arrow just because of how quickly the engineer dies. But if you want to be certain that you're going to get the proc on the engineer, you can use both. But if you want to cast Black Arrow on Garrosh before you run over and then place your trap up, you've pretty much got it under control. So that's Garrosh. There's a couple of cool things you can do for Gary. But that's going to do it for going over the Siege of Orgrimmar tips and tricks. Quite the lengthy episode. I didn't know it was actually going to stretch over an hour, but I'm glad that we actually got everything knocked out. And then also with that Siegecrafter video, I really feel like you guys are going to get a lot of benefit from the Siegecrafter video. It's very informative. So let's get out of that. We're going to go into a few questions before we wrap up the show. I have 2 questions for the show this week, and we're going to get right into them. So Shrakor from Argent Dawn EU wants to know, what add-ons would you recommend to use as a hunter for raiding, and are there any hunter-specific add-ons that you use? I run a fairly light add-on scene. I only use Bartender for my bars and Shadowed Unit Frames for my unit frames. Other than that, everything is basically default. However, I really think being able to get a good view of your focus bar is incredibly important. So there are add-ons that are out there, like one's called, I think one is seriously just called Focus Bar. It's almost an exact copy of Rage Bar for warriors, and you can size the focus bar anywhere you want on your screen. You can make it large, you can make it small, but just being able to keep track of your focus is very important as a hunter, and I really do recommend that. But one thing that I really do want to mention is weak auras, and I think we're all very familiar with weak auras at this point, but being able to track your trinkets, how the duration of your trinkets, when is the internal cooldown going to come up again, that's huge. And being able to use weak auras for things like your Assurance of Consequence trinket is incredibly beneficial, especially for things like Stampede. Stampede and being able to know when your Assurance of Consequence is going to proc is huge. So what I like to do is I like to make a weak aura for my 2 trinkets for when they proc, and then what the internal cooldown is for my Assurance, so I know when to use Stampede. So say like Stampede comes off cooldown, and my Assurance of Consequence isn't going to proc for another 45 seconds. I'm going to hold on to my Stampede until my AOC procs, and then I'm going to use Stampede with the hugely buffed now, an extra 20,000 agility or whatever it is. I forget, it's like 17 to 20,000 agility bonus, and that Stampede is going to be very potent at this point. A lot of people, I feel like, do not hold on to their Stampede for this reason. So being able to track your trinkets with weak auras and the ICD, if you have ICD trinkets like that, is very valuable. So I think that hopefully that helps you out. And the second question we have from Twitter, and it comes from Slickrock, and he wants to know, question for the show, what current gear should we prioritize in picking up for bringing into Warlords of Draenor? And that is a interesting question. Any gear from Siege of Orgrimmar that you can upgrade as high as you can, be it Heroic, Warforged, etc. You want to juice as much Siege of Orgrimmar gear as you can with those upgrades. But right now there are many off pieces for our gear. Like we have our 4-piece, and then we get to get rings, trinkets, boosts. There are a lot of options just outside of our tier that have things like expertise, mastery, hit, haste. Hold on to those pieces. I don't know off the top of my head. I believe Wowhead has a tool that tells you what these stats are going to become once they remove hit and expertise. But if you really wanted to min-max for BM, hold on to gear that has mastery haste or will become mastery haste when the hit and expertise is removed off of them. And for survival, hold on to gear that has crit and mastery on them. I think that's pretty important to know. I mean, if you really wanted to min-max your gear, I mean, anything you get out of Siege is going to be the best option. But if you really wanted to maximize those secondary stats, take a look at what that hit and expertise is going to become, and then prioritize the gear that has the most 2 valuable secondary stats for your spec. So there is that, and I'm pretty sure that Wowhead does have a tool that will tell you what the hit and expertise is going to become. I don't know, someone saw it, and I got to see it too, but I honestly forget where it was, but it is out there. But good question, and I think it's kind of neat to know that, hey, what is this going to become after the hit and expertise are dropped as well. So that's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you guys for writing in. If you guys have a question for the show, you can fire it at Twitter. That's twitter.com/Cloak and Quiver, Cloak and Quiver. Or you can email the show at cloakandquiver@gmail.com, and we can pick it up there as well. If you want to follow me on Twitter for Hunter and Warcraft related news, you can. That's _SolarFlare, and Flare is FLAIR. Next week's show is going to be the Marksman Show. So I'm excited to do that. You'll probably get to see it on Saturday or Sunday again as well, just because Friday is my only day off. And I'm glad we got to talk a lot about Siege of Orgrimmar to get that knocked out and out of the way. I hope you guys learned a tip or two, or maybe you could, pass this information on to a hunter that would benefit from this information. So I'm glad we got to have a long show. This is, I think, the longest show that we've had in the show's history. But that's going to do it. I hope to see you guys next week for the Marksman episode, so you guys can have a little bit of fun with Marksman in case you're bored with Survival or BM. And I think that's going to do it. So I'll catch you guys on the flip side, and I will see you next time. 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 See you next time.